This is the true story of a man who faced the unthinkable. Gabriel, a down-to-earth mechanic with a heart of gold, made the ultimate sacrifice of his life. He traded his own freedom for the cold bars of a prison cell. To protect the woman he loved, he took the blame for a crime he didn't commit, all to shield Sophia's wife and the mother of his child from an even greater tragedy. But what Gabriel didn't see coming, and what hit him like a freight train, was that Sophia wasn't the person he thought she was. The truth came crashing down, tearing apart the love and trust he'd placed in her. The man who believed he'd done the right thing found his world turned upside down when secrets he never imagined came to light. Get ready for a story that's all about sacrifice, betrayal, and the pursuit of redemption. Each twist will leave you speechless, and the ending, let's just say, it'll hit you harder than you expect. Stick around, because Gabriel's journey isn't just about what he lost, it's about the strength he found to rise again and fight for justice. This is a story you won't want to miss. Gabriel, a laid-back guy with a big heart, always went above and beyond to make sure his wife, Sophia, they had been married for 3 years, and the news of their first child on the way was a mix of pure joy and the occasional financial worry that hovered over their modest home. Gabriel worked as a mechanic in a small but well-respected shop, known for his skill and honesty. Sophia, with her sweet and caring nature, ran the household with love, turning their humble space into a home filled with warmth and hope. That afternoon, the couple decided to go out and buy a new kettle. The old one, which had once belonged to Gabriel's mother, had finally given out after years of faithful service. It was a simple object, but it carried a lot of sentimental value, making Sophia determined to find the perfect replacement. She carefully inspected every option in the store, while Gabriel stood by patiently, teasing her about being so picky over something as small as a kettle. By the time they made their choice, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange that lit up their walk back to the car. "I'll drive," Sophia said, grabbing the keys before Gabriel could react. He paused for a second but eventually handed them over. "All right, but take it easy. We're not in a rush." Despite his calm tone, there was a flicker of unease in his voice. Sophia smiled confidently as she slid into the driver's seat, ready to take the wheel. As soon as Sophia took the wheel, she hit the gas with determination. The road was narrow, flanked by trees swaying gently in the breeze, but the speed of the car created a growing tension inside the cabin. Gabriel, keeping a close eye on the speedometer, couldn't hide his unease. "Babe, you're driving way too fast. If you hadn't taken forever in the store, I wouldn't have to rush. I've got a soap opera to catch." Sophia quipped with a nervous laugh, trying to lighten the mood. Gabriel took a deep breath. He knew Sophia had a habit of joking to deflect serious situations, but his worry for her pregnancy made it impossible to stay calm. "That soap opera isn't worth our lives." She huffed but reluctantly eased up on the gas. Still, her urgency was palpably the tight grip on the wheel, her eyes locked on the road ahead. Gabriel turned to the window, trying to find some comfort in the rapidly passing scenery, but the heavy feeling that something was about to go wrong wouldn't let him relax. "You need to trust me more, Gabriel. I know what I'm doing." He was about to respond, but his words caught in his throat as a sharp gasp escaped him. Gabriel's scream echoed inside the car as he spotted something moving on the road. It was a young man, seemingly appearing out of nowhere, crossing without looking. "Sophia, hit the brakes," he yelled. She slammed her foot on the brake instinctively, but the car was already going too fast. The sound of the impact was sharp and deafening, and the car jolted violently before coming to an abrupt stop on the shoulder. Gabriel felt the world spinning around him, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of his chest. "What was that?" Sophia asked, her voice shaky, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Gabriel stumbled out of the car, his legs unsteady. The air felt thick, and his ears were ringing. As he approached the figure lying motionless on the asphalt, his knees buckled beneath him. The young man wasn't moving. "Oh my God," Gabriel murmured, dropping to his knees beside the boy. He checked for a pulse, but there was nothing. He looked back at Sophia, who was frozen in the driver's seat, her face pale as a sheet. "Is he dead?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Gabriel nodded silently, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a crushing wave. The silence that followed was deafening. Gabriel remained kneeling beside the lifeless body for what felt like hours, though only seconds had passed. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Who was this young man? What was he doing on the road? And most pressing of all, how could he and Sophia possibly deal with this? Sophia stumbled out of the car, walking slowly toward her husband. When her eyes fell on the young man's body, she covered her face with trembling hands, letting out a loud, choked sob. "No, this can't be happening. This can't be happening." Gabriel stood up and grabbed her arms firmly, his eyes locked on hers. "Get back in the car, Sophia. No one can see you here. Go, now." She hesitated for a moment but eventually obeyed, retreating to the passenger seat, her sobs still audible. Gabriel took a deep breath, glancing around in search of a solution. He needed help, but he also knew that calling the authorities would change their lives forever. In the distance, he spotted a house. Without wasting time, he ran toward it and knocked urgently on the door. An elderly man appeared, and after hearing what had happened, he nodded gravely and agreed to call an ambulance. Gabriel mumbled a quick thanks and rushed back to the car. Sophia was curled up in the passenger seat, quietly crying into her hands. "The ambulance is on its way. Stay calm, it's going to be okay," he said, trying to sound reassuring, though every fiber of his being told him that nothing was okay. As they waited, Gabriel glanced at Sophia. She was utterly shattered, her eyes swollen from crying, and her hands trembling uncontrollably. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him, knowing there was no time to waste. When the authorities arrived, someone would have to take responsibility for what had happened. "I'll say it was me," Gabriel said firmly, breaking the heavy silence. Sophia's head shot up, her tear-streaked face filled with shock. "No, you can't do that. It was my fault. I was driving." "You're pregnant, Sophia," he interrupted, his tone unwavering. "I'm not letting you go through this," Sophia stammered, trying to find the right words to argue. But Gabriel wouldn't budge. His resolve was unshakable. He understood the risk she's freedom, his life as he knew it, but the thought of Sophia facing this nightmare alone, especially while carrying their child, was something he couldn't bear. "It's decided," he said softly but with finality, reaching out to hold her trembling hands. "I'll take care of it. You and the baby are what matter most." The next few minutes felt like the longest of Gabriel's life. Every distant sound seemed like a signal that the authorities were nearing, and the weight of his decision pressed heavily on his shoulders. Sophia clung to his hand, gripping it tightly, as though trying to stop him from following through. "I won't be able to live with this," she sobbed. "It's not fair to you." Gabriel squeezed her hand in return, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Fair would be if this had never happened," he said softly. "But now we have to face the consequences." He knew there was no other way. When the flashing red and blue lights finally appeared down the road, illuminating the darkened landscape, Gabriel drew in a deep breath. This was it, the moment to step forward and bear the weight of the choice he'd made. "Stay in the car," he said firmly to Sophia. "No matter what happens, remember I'm doing this for us, for the family we're building." With those words, he opened the door and stepped out, the cold night air biting at his skin as he walked toward the approaching lights, ready to face what lay ahead. When the police arrived at the scene, Gabriel approached them, his shoulders slumped under the weight of his decision. His heart pounded like a drum as he began explaining what had happened. "I was driving. The young man crossed out of nowhere, and I couldn't stop in time," he said, doing his best to keep his voice steady. The officers watched him closely, jotting down every word. One of them, with a stern expression, asked, "And your wife? Was she in the car with you?" Gabriel hesitated for a split second before replying. "She was in the passenger seat. She's pregnant and was really shaken up by what happened." The officer nodded and headed toward the car where Sophia sat. She looked at Gabriel, her eyes brimming with tears, but stayed silent as they had agreed. Gabriel knew this lie wouldn't just change the trajectory of his life, it would drag him into a spiral of uncertainty and pain. Moments later, the paramedics arrived and confirmed the worst. The young man hadn't survived the impact. Gabriel's throat tightened as he watched them place the body into a black bag. The image seared itself into his mind, and he knew it was one he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The weight of the decision he'd made began to sink in as the flashing lights reflected off the trees, painting the night in a blur of red and blue. This was only the beginning of a long road ahead. Back at home, Sophia could barely look at Gabriel. She sat on the couch, clutching a pillow to her chest, while he paced back and forth, trying to process what he had just done. "Why did you do that?" she asked, her voice weak. "I should be responsible for my actions." Gabriel stopped in his tracks and looked at her. "You're carrying our child, Sophia. I'm not going to let you go through this." "Not now." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "But this is going to destroy you, destroy both of us." Gabriel sighed, feeling the full weight of the responsibility he had taken on. He knew Sophia was right, but deep down, he believed that his choice was the only way to protect her. That night, neither of them slept. While Sophia relived the impact in her nightmares, Gabriel stared at the ceiling, consumed by thoughts of what would come. The next day, the police returned to the house to gather more information. Gabriel stuck to his story, repeating every detail with precision. He knew that any hesitation could raise suspicion, but his heart raced every time he had. The officers also spoke with Sophia, who confirmed Gabriel's version. However, one of them, with a sharp gaze, seemed skeptical. He asked more direct questions, trying to spot any inconsistency. "Are you sure you were in the passenger seat?" he asked Sophia. She took a deep breath and responded, "I'm sure. I was too scared to drive." Gabriel watched the scene unfold, anxiety clawing at him. He feared that any small slip-up could unravel everything. When the officers finally left, he felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him even more, as if the consequences of his actions were closing in. As the investigation progressed, news of the accident began to spread throughout. Gabriel, once known for his honesty and dedication to his work, was now seen as the man who had taken the life of a promising young. Sophia avoided leaving the house, afraid of the stares and whispers that followed her wherever she. Gabriel, on the other hand, still had to work to support their family, facing the murmurs and disapproving looks every. He was so young. He had such a bright future ahead of him, he overheard someone say at the workshop. Gabriel swallowed hard and kept working, but the words echoed in his mind, haunting him with every step. Each day seemed harder than the last, and he knew that the official judgment would be just one part of the struggle. Society's judgment had already begun. Sophia spent her days engulfed in a mix of guilt and anxiety. She constantly questioned whether she should have insisted that Gabriel tell the truth, but at the same time, she feared what would happen if he did so. One afternoon, she received a visit from Clara, her best friend. Clara knew something was wrong but didn't have all the details. "Sophia, you're different. It's like you're carrying an enormous weight. What's going on?" Sophia hesitated. For a moment, she considered telling her everything, but fear won. "Nothing, it's just the pregnancy. It's been tough," she said, avoiding Clara's gaze. Clara hugged her, but Sophia couldn't find any comfort in the embrace. She knew she was trapped in a web of lies, and sooner or later, the truth would catch up with her just as it would with Gabriel. One of the hardest moments for Gabriel came when he encountered the mother of the young man who had died. She showed up at the workshop, silent, her eyes red from crying. Gabriel's heart clenched at the sight. "I had to see you. I needed to understand what happened," she said, her voice trembling. Gabriel couldn't meet her gaze. He explained the accident as respectfully as he could, leaving out the truth about who had been driving. The woman listened in silence, clutching a handkerchief in her hand. "He was my only son. He had so many dreams," she murmured before turning to. Gabriel stood there, feeling like a monster. That night, he told Sophia about the encounter, and the two of them cried together, sharing the weight of the tragedy they had caused. The days following the encounter with the young man's mother brought a new level of suffering for Gabriel. The image of that woman, devastated by the loss, lingered in his. he asked himself over and over what the young man's life could have been like. Did he have a specific dream? A passion that would now never be real? Each of these questions felt like another blow to his already shattered conscience. Meanwhile, Sophia began to face anxiety attacks. She would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, reliving the accident, the sound of the impact, and Gabriel's muffled scream. During one of these episodes, she screamed, "I can't take this anymore, Gabriel. This is going to destroy it." He held her tightly, comforting her as she cried. Despite his own pain, Gabriel tried to be her. He knew that, no matter how heavy the burden, he needed to stay strong for her and for the child they were expecting. "We'll get through this, Sophia. Somehow we will," he whispered, even though he couldn't bring himself to believe his own words. As Gabriel tried to resume his routine, new details about the young man began to emerge. His name was Lucas, and he was only 19 years old. He was an engineering student, well liked by his community, known for his charisma and intelligence. However, something about Lucas intrigued Gabriel. People who knew him mentioned that he didn't usually walk along that road, especially at night. This made Gabriel wonder, what was he doing? Was there something they still didn't know about that tragic moment? Sophia noticed Gabriel's pensive behavior. "And what's bothering you now?" He hesitated before. "Something doesn't add up. Why was Lucas on that road? I heard he didn't live anywhere near there." Sophia shook her head, trying to push the conversation away. "It doesn't matter why. What matters is what we did. Dwelling on it will just make everything worse." But for Gabriel, that mystery felt like an extra weight he needed to. A few days later, Gabriel was approached by Marcos, a childhood friend of Lucas. He showed up at the workshop with a serious expression. "I need to talk to you about Lucas," Marcos said bluntly. Gabriel felt a chill run down his spine. He nodded and motioned for Marcos to follow him to a quieter. "What do you want to know?" Gabriel asked, trying to hide the tension in his voice. Marcos looked around, as if afraid of being overheard. Lucas had been dealing with some problems. He never told his family, but I think he was involved with dangerous people. The last time I saw him, he was acting strange, like something was scaring. Gabriel was speechless. That piece of information seemed to open a door to a new perspective. Could Lucas have been running from someone when he crossed the... And if that were true, would it change anything about what had happened? Disturbed by Marcos's words, Gabriel began to dig deeper into Lucas's life. He visited places where the young man used to go, spoke with classmates, and even went to a bar near the college where Lucas had studied. There, he overheard rumors that Lucas had gotten involved in a dangerous debt with a local loan shark. This discovery shook him to the core. On one hand, he felt that understanding the context might bring some relief to the guilt he carried. On the other, he knew that no explanation could justify what had happened. When he told Sophia about his investigation, she became angry. "Why are you doing this? We already have enough problems, Gabriel. Digging up the past won't change anything. I just want to understand. I want to know if there was something more behind that night," he replied, frustrated. Sophia sighed, shaking her head. For her, each new detail seemed to only open wounds that would never heal. The weight of guilt began to take a toll on Gabriel's health. He had bouts of insomnia, lost his appetite, and felt a constant sense of dread. His coworkers noticed the changes, but no one had the courage to ask him directly what was going on. One afternoon, while working on a car, Gabriel collapsed. He woke up in the local infirmary, with Sophia by his side, holding his hand. "You need to stop this, Gabriel. It's consuming you," she said, tears in her eyes. He agreed to take better care of himself, but deep down he knew that the problem wasn't just physical. It was the weight of his choices that was tearing him apart from the inside. One day, Gabriel decided to visit Lucas's mother again. He felt he owed her something, even if he couldn't tell her the whole truth. When he arrived, he found the woman tending to a small garden in front of the house. "Mrs. Helena, may I talk to you?" he asked, his voice soft. She nodded and invited him to sit on the porch. Gabriel hesitated before speaking. "I just wanted to say, I am deeply sorry for what happened. I know nothing will bring your son back, but I want you to know he hasn't been forgotten." Helena looked at him with an expression that was hard to read. "You carry a heavy burden, Gabriel. I can see it in your eyes. I don't know if it was just an accident or if there's more to it. But I hope you find peace one day. Her words were like a knife to Gabriel's heart. He left the house feeling even more torn between keeping the secret and confessing the truth. Days after the conversation with Mrs. Helena, Gabriel started noticing strange movements around him. A black car was often parked near his workshop, and unfamiliar eyes seemed to follow him when he went to the market or to work. This put him on high alert. He wondered if his investigation into Lucas had attracted the attention of someone dangerous. One night, as he was closing the workshop, a man appeared from the darkness. He was tall, with an intimidating posture and a cold gaze. Without beating around the bush, he said, "Leave the past behind, Gabriel. It's none of your business what Lucas did or who he was involved with." Gabriel remained silent, but his heart raced. The man took a step forward, his threatening presence almost palpable. Curious people tend to have problems. Mind your own business. When the man left, Gabriel stood still, trying to comprehend what had just happened. He knew he couldn't ignore it. There was something much bigger behind Lucas's death, and now he was in it up to his neck. That encounter reinforced Gabriel's need to protect his family. He couldn't allow Sophia or the baby to be in danger. But at the same time, the desire for justice grew within him. Lucas wasn't just a victim of an accident. He seemed to be a pawn in a dangerous game that Gabriel was only beginning to understand. That night, he discussed the situation with Sophia. "I can't ignore this anymore. Something's wrong, Sophia, and I need to find out what it is," he said with determination. She grabbed him by the shoulders, her eyes filled with fear. "And what are you going to do? Face dangerous people? Please, Gabriel, think about our family." He took her hands and replied, "It's because of you both that I have to do this. I can't live in fear for the rest of my life." The next morning, Gabriel made a risky decision. He would seek out Marcos, Lucas's friend, to get more information. He knew it was a point of no return, but he also knew that the truth could be his only chance for redemption. When he met with Marcos, Gabriel went straight to the point. "I need to know everything about what Lucas was involved in. You said he had problems, but you didn't tell the whole truth. Who's behind them?" Marcos hesitated, looking around as if expecting someone to be listening. Then, with a heavy sigh, he revealed, "Lucas owed money to a man named Alvaro. He's known for running an illegal gambling and extortion scheme. Lucas tried to get out of it, but Alvaro wouldn't leave him." Gabriel felt a chill run down his spine upon hearing the name. He knew facing Alvaro would be dangerous, but he also knew he couldn't back down. Gabriel began to devise a plan to expose Alvaro and his operation. He didn't know exactly how he would do it, but he felt that this was his chance to bring some justice to the chaos that had invaded his life. Meanwhile, Sophia continued to express her concern. "You don't need to be a hero, Gabriel. What matters is that we're together and safe." "It's not about being a hero, Sophia. It's about doing what's right," he replied, with a conviction she couldn't contest. Determined, Gabriel began gathering evidence. He used the little he knew to find people who had also been harmed by. Amid threats and distrust, he managed to piece together small fragments of information that painted a terrifying picture. Alvaro ran a criminal empire, and Lucas had been just another. Gabriel knew he was putting himself at risk, but he believed the truth needed to be revealed, not only for Lucas, but for everyone who had suffered at the hands of that. As Gabriel delved deeper into Alvaro's underworld, he knew he was playing a dangerous. Each step brought him closer to the truth, but also put him at greater risk, not just for him, but for his. He had one mission: to bring justice for Lucas, and for all those who had been victims of a corrupt and violent. But the question lingering in the air was, how far was Gabriel willing to go? Would he be able to expose Alvaro without losing everything he had been? Or would the pursuit of truth end up destroying his last chance for redemption with Sophia? And what do you think will happen? Will Gabriel find peace? Or will he fall even deeper into the darkness of his choice? Don't miss part 2 of this thrilling story, where the tension and secrets reach their breaking point. If you want to find out what comes next, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you'll be the first to watch part 2 of this journey of sacrifice, redemption, and perhaps a little justice. See you.